person in that meeting. Please rise for the flag of Canada. Order, please. As with the tradition of Budget Day in the House, with the unanimous consent of the House, we will commence with the motion for resolution number 246, respecting the estimates under orders of the day. This means that the daily routine will be deferred until after the response to the budget speech is adjourned. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed. With that consent, I will now recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, pursuant to the notice of motion given by me October 3rd, 2025, and the rules and forms of procedures of the House of Assembly, I have the honour by command to present a message from His Honour, the Lieutenant Governor of the Province of Nova Scotia, relating to the estimates of sums required for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027, which is: I hereby transmit estimates of the sums required for the public service of the province for the year ending March 31st, 2027, and in accordance with the...
Please stand. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Oh, want me to start that again?
You're supposed to just table it and do the speech, so you started the speech to stand for
Okay.
the LG.
Is he here?
So,
Okay.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby transmit the estimates of sums required for the public service of the province for the year ending March 31st, 2027, in accordance with the Constitution Act 1867. Recommend them, together with the budget address of my Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, and any resolutions or bills necessary or advisable to approve the estimates and implement the budget measures to the House of Assembly. Signed, Mike Savage, Lieutenant Governor.
You may be seated. Please get that. The estimates are tabled. The Honourable Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will now begin my budget speech. I do want to let the House know that in keeping with the long-standing tradition, I am wearing a new pair of shoes, a Canadian-made Ola Berthe boot, which is very similar to a very popular Australian boot. So I'm keeping that tradition. Madam Speaker, in a world where trade rules can change overnight, supply chains can break, and global politics can shift without warning, defending Nova Scotia means making our province resilient at home and abroad. Defending Nova Scotia today isn't just about borders or institutions. It's about economic resilience, whether our province can absorb shocks, adapt quickly, and protect what matters most to its people when conditions change beyond our control. Over the last several years, Nova Scotians have seen how quickly global events can reach into daily life. Decisions made far beyond our borders have affected the price of food, fuel, and housing. They have influenced interest rates, energy costs, and the availability of essential goods. These pressures have reminded us that Nova Scotia does not operate in isolation. Resilience, therefore, is no longer an abstract idea or a distant policy goal. It is practical, it is immediate, and it is central to responsible government. Resilience has two dimensions. There is resilience inside Nova Scotia. That means timely access to timely and reliable health care and housing that people can afford. It means infrastructure that connects communities and public services families can depend on, even when conditions are challenging. And there is resilience outside Nova Scotia. That looks like a diversified trade relationships, competitive and innovative industries, and reliable partners. This gives us the capacity to respond when global markets or political realities shift suddenly. Recent years have reinforced a simple truth. Over-reliance is a vulnerability. When too much of our economy depends on a single market, a single supply chain, or a single decision maker elsewhere, shocks do not remain theoretical. They land here quickly and forcefully. This budget and our government are focused on reducing that vulnerability. It is about defending Nova Scotia by strengthening our foundations and positioning our province to move with confidence in an increasingly uncertain world. To defend Nova Scotia effectively, we must be honest about how vulnerability was allowed to grow. For years, past governments focused on reducing financial deficits while allowing real-world deficits to grow. Fiscal balance sheets improved, but Nova Scotia's real-life experiences told a different story. Healthcare wait lists grew longer. Housing supply failed to keep pace with population growth. Infrastructure aged without adequate investment. Affordability pressures mounted for families, seniors, and young people, and were often left unaddressed. These were not sudden failures. They were the result of delayed decisions, deferred maintenance, and a reluctance to confront structural problems directly. Those choices did not always appear immediately on balance sheets, but they showed up clearly in emergency rooms, rental markets, classrooms, and household budgets across the province. At the same time, Nova Scotia was increasingly exposed to external risk. Canada's economy is reliant on a narrow set of trading partners, particularly the United States. That creates risk for the whole country, including Nova Scotia. In stable times, that was manageable. In today's world, marked by trade disputes, protectionism, supply chain disruptions, and political volatility, it has become a clear and present risk. Acknowledging this is not ideological, it is risk management. Past governments blocked responsible resource development and failed to fully leverage Nova Scotia's natural advantages. By doing so, they weakened both the province's revenue base and its economy and energy independence, reducing our ability to respond when global conditions shifted. This government has made a deliberate and strategic choice to focus on its ability to deliver for Nova Scotians. We understand that resilience does not come from writing larger checks alone. It comes from building systems that work better, move faster, and deliver results more consistently for Nova Scotians. We invested heavily to address years of underinvestment, but we also changed how government delivers services and supports growth. In healthcare, we expanded training and recruitment, reduced barriers to credential recognition, and shortened pathways for doctors, nurses, and other health professionals to practice in Nova Scotia. We invested in team-based care, modernized facilities, ensured that more Nova Scotians could access care closer to home, because care delayed is care denied. And a resilient healthcare system is a foundational pillar of a resilient province. Nova Scotia has had a net gain of 570 new physicians since 2021. Our surgical waitlist is at a record low since 2015, and we are now a top-performing province for hip and knee joint replacements, cataract surgeries, and hip fractures. Our primary healthcare network is far stronger today than it was when we came to office. There are now more pathways to care, like urgent treatment centres, pharmacy clinics, virtual care NS, and mobile primary care clinics. 124 health homes offer team-based care across the province. We created an additional 80,000 primary care appointments every month, and we've seen a nearly 60% drop in the number of people on the Need a Family Practice Registry in the last year. In housing, we streamlined approvals, reduced duplication across departments and orders of government, and removed unnecessary regulatory delays that slowed construction and drove up costs. As a result, housing starts are up significantly across the province. Completions are rising, and the vacancy rate has more than doubled. This was a record year for preserving and building affordable housing. In this year alone, we enabled 1,032 affordable units. In the past 4 years, over 3,000 affordable housing units have been preserved or created. That progress did not happen by accident. It happened because government stopped standing in the way. We did not just invest more, we removed obstacles that were blocking delivery. In an uncertain world, red tape is not neutral. Delay is a vulnerability. Delay in housing approvals means higher costs and fewer homes. Delays in credentialing mean longer wait times and fewer professionals available to deliver care. Delays in project approval mean lost investment, lost revenue, and lost opportunities for communities. Through initiatives such as fewer permits, faster projects, this government has streamlined or improved more than half of all provincial permits. These reforms save time, reduce costs, and create the conditions for business and communities to grow. Cutting red tape is about gaining access to competence and accountability faster. When systems move faster, Nova Scotia becomes more resilient. When decisions are clear and timelines are predictable, investment follows. Speed is a form of defense in a rapidly changing world. This government understands that a resilient province must be able to harness its natural strengths and respond responsibly and sustainably. We clarified standards for resource development, helping projects move more quickly while ensuring strong environmental protections. We also made sure that community benefit agreements are built into project development from the outset. That clarity has allowed Nova Scotia to move forward on major projects, from offshore wind under the nationally recognized Wind West to mining, forestry innovation, and a renewed interest in responsible natural gas development. Our focus on resource development is about defending our economy, but it's also about ensuring our security. Currently, we are reliant on the United States for our natural gas. All of our natural gas used to power our electrical grid flows through the United States. This exposes our grid to unnecessary risk. It also means we are driving up the cost of our energy. We use natural gas to generate a substantial portion of the electricity we need in Nova Scotia. Right now, we buy it elsewhere and transport it here. We do this even though we have enough onshore natural gas to meet domestic demand for 200 years. It makes no sense to transport natural gas here from elsewhere. It makes even less sense when we consider the economics of this agreement. When we rely on others for our natural gas supply, we are agreeing to export resource jobs elsewhere. And we drive up the cost of fuel needed to meet our electricity demands. That is why we announced a research partnership with Dalhousie University. This partnership will help us better identify the natural gas potential and help us understand how to access this resource carefully, safely, and responsibly. Saying yes to responsible development is not lowering environmental standards. It's enforcing them clearly and consistently. In a world seeking energy, critical minerals, sustainable food, and secure supply chains, Nova Scotia has what global markets need. Harnessing these advantages responsibly strengthens our economy, supports good-paying jobs, and reinforces our economic independence. Trade diversification is not a slogan. It is a strategy grounded in resilience. To reach new markets, a province must be able to deliver on time, at scale, and to standard. That requires skilled workers, modern infrastructure, efficient approvals, and predictable rules. This government has expanded trade relationships across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. We have supported exporters as they enter new markets and help businesses compete globally. Just last year alone, exports to France grew by almost a third. Exports to Denmark grew by 33%. Exports to Spain grew by 23%. Exports to Italy nearly doubled in 1 year. Putting that into perspective, our exports to the UK grew by 2%, and exports to the United States are relatively steady. And in 2025, 84 companies joined the province on fisheries trades missions. Those companies say the missions have helped them generate $67.5 million in sales. By diversifying where we sell our goods and services, we reduce our exposure to any single market and strengthen our ability to withstand global shocks. Resilience is not just about what we build, it is about whether we can sustain it. A province that cannot manage its finances cannot defend what matters most. High deficits limit flexibility. Rising debt crowds out future choices. Interest costs divert resources away from health care, housing, education, and infrastructure. Every dollar spent servicing debt is a dollar we cannot spend responding to new challenges or protecting essential services. In a world of volatile trade relationships, shifting interest rates, and unpredictable global politics, financial stability is not optional. It is protective. A resilient province needs the fiscal capacity to act when others are forced to react. This government approaches fiscal discipline not as retrenchment, but as protection. Discipline is about guardrails. It is about insurance. It gives us the ability to absorb future shocks. Financial discipline protects the services Nova Scotians rely on by ensuring government can respond to future uncertainty without sacrificing core priorities. Stable finances create predictable government. Predictable government builds confidence, and confidence drives investment, growth, and opportunity. Stability creates opportunity for families, for businesses, and for communities across Nova Scotia. This budget reflects a clear choice: discipline without retreat. Healthcare is protected. Education is protected. Housing is protected. Core public services are protected. There are no tax increases for Nova Scotians. In fact, this budget continues in last year's tax cuts. changes that will save Nova Scotia families on average over $1,400 this year. Additionally, Nova Scotians are seeing lower child care costs, tolls removed, and targeted affordability supports for seniors, students, and low-income households. This is a focused, disciplined, outcome-driven budget. As part of the response to and in the immediate aftermath of the COVID pandemic, the size of the bureaucracy grew. However, that growth in public service is not sustainable. Government needs to become more focused and efficient, and the public service will do its part. Over the next 4 years, the civil service will see cuts of 5% every year. This will save us $95 million by year 4. The broader public service will see 3% cuts. We will work to protect core frontline services and care that Nova Scotians rely on, while reducing the number of people who work inside government. To assist this, we will make investments in technology, work more efficiently, focus the efforts of government on strategic priorities that will drive our province forward. We know that these challenges will impact people and families, and these decisions were not made lightly. But these are necessary decisions needed to defend our finances and our ability to respond to future shocks and risks. But we also must take steps to rein in government spending. In the lead up to budget, we were very clear we would review discretionary spending. We will reduce grants by $130.4 million this year. We did not make these decisions lightly. We understand that this will mean significant change for some organizations, and that can be very difficult. When deciding which grants would continue, we focused on the grants that meet the strategic priorities of the province. We focused on health care, housing, education, and growing our economy. Opportunity does not come from government doing more for the sake of doing more. It comes from government clearing pathways so people, communities, and businesses can build. This budget defends Nova Scotia by strengthening its foundations, reducing its vulnerabilities, and positioning our province to move with confidence in an uncertain world. That is what resilience looks like. That is what defense means in 2026, and that is the work this government will continue to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am honoured to rise and offer our initial reaction to Budget 2026 here in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also live here building on the legacy of African Nova Scotians who were settled here starting 400 years ago, and Acadian communities who fought to be here and fought to return despite colonial dispossession. Nova Scotia has then been built on the waves of many of us who have arrived up until this day. I'm going to start off with some news for this government. It is the decisions and actions of this government that are being felt today and will be felt for future generations of Nova Scotians, and not positively. The minister referred to discipline, which has been lacking, building resilience, which we haven't been, and I'm going to talk through about some of our concerns about this. This government has spent $6.7 billion over their annual approved budgets since 2021. And the question is, what do Nova Scotians have to show for it? People trusted that if this government took their problems seriously, things would start to get better. But power bills keep rising, rents keep climbing, and home ownership remains out of reach. Rural emergency rooms close or keep people waiting for hours, and parents still can't find childcare that they can afford. These aren't inevitabilities. They are the result of choices choices that are not clear and are not benefiting the majority of Nova Scotians. A budget should tell Nova Scotians what they can expect. This should be a budget that tells Nova Scotians that sorting out the mess of Nova Scotia Power will be the Premier/Energy Minister's top priority, that people will be able to heat their homes with affordable, reliable, and clean energy. This should be a budget that delivers real meaningful results for Nova Scotians waiting for the health care they deserve. Tens of thousands of people are still waiting for primary care attachment. Tens of thousands of people found themselves in some sort of new category called pending, where they really didn't have primary care attachment. Rural emergency rooms across the province are shut more often than they're open. Women and gender diverse people have been treated like an afterthought and still lack the endometriosis care, timely cancer screenings, and free birth control they need. And while the Menopause Centre has been announced, I think that what I have heard from people is real concern that they haven't been able to get the treatment they need for endometriosis, for instance. So what will be different, and how will the healthcare system be able to accommodate the issue of menopause? This should be a budget for parents who want primary care for their infants, child care so that the whole family can thrive, and public education that brings educational success no matter who their children are or what challenges they have. This should be a budget for seniors who are struggling with great uncertainty after a lifetime of work and community contribution. They face diminishing buying power where all costs rise for their homes, their rents, food, and support for their transitions. This should be a budget for Nova Scotia's youth, for a public education system that supports them to their fullest potential, assures access to post-secondary education and training, assures young people they can find a job. Our youth unemployment rate is at least double what the average unemployment rate is in the province. And youth want to be able to afford the cost of daily living and build their own life in this province. This should be a budget that demonstrates our collective stewardship of the land and sea with real protections for coastal communities. It should ensure the beautiful places and biodiversity that make our province special and drive our tourism and traditional industries are protected. It should respect Nova Scotians' commitment to protecting our environment and tackling climate change so that our communities are indeed resilient for generations to come. This should be a budget that presents a coherent approach to community economic development, building on the businesses and sectors that we now have in the province and who could do so much more with the right support, like in agriculture, arts, culture, and tourism. These are the results, these are the lives that Nova Scotians want. Nova Scotians are proud of how they get through hard times. They work hard, look out for each other, and don't ask for much, just a fair shot to build life here at home. But right now, power bills are up by about $400 a year for the average family, and there's almost no housing that people can afford. Rural economic development projects are promising jobs in decades, not now, not next year. And more people are leaving. We've seen population growth slow to basically zero, and people are having to leave because they don't want to, but they feel they have no choice in order to get ahead. And that's all been happening on this government's watch. Nova Scotians have given this government and this Premier the benefit of the doubt. They understand, we all understand, that challenges are real and complicated. They waited and trusted that if government took these problems seriously, things would start to get better. But 5 years in, the difference people were promised still isn't here. They are the result of choices. If the government was serious about fixing these problems, Nova Scotians would be feeling it by now. This budget is another failure on the part of this government to make sure all Nova Scotians live securely. I want to start with the tax cuts that are so greatly celebrated. I think it's really important to understand that these tax cuts are not affecting families equally. So that average number, that $1,400 a year, that's a pretty rough estimate based on our population. And actually, for a household has to be earning $85,000 to $100,000 a year for that tax cut to equal $1,400. For families who earn between $15,000 and $25,000 a year, the sort of lowest income and most vulnerable amongst us, in fact, the tax cuts only bring about $471. Now, this is information that is available to the minister. It's available to this government, and I think, we can't go around talking about these big tax cuts without being clear about who they really affect and who they benefit. So for families with, again, $15,000 to $25,000 a year, it's $471. $25,000 to $35,000 is $546. We get to the $1,400 in savings for those households that earn between $85,000 to $100,000. But then guess what happens for folks who even earn more than that? Actually, they benefit even more from these tax cuts. This is how consumption tax work. And so this is what we're seeing in so many areas where the benefits for Nova Scotians are not being seen except for a few people, a few organizations. As well, the tax cuts include an HST rebate for energy that Nova Scotians have had for about 15 years. It's not lowering power bills, it's just repackaging. Nova Scotians haven't paid HST and home energy for over 15 years. And furthermore, there's nothing in this budget to help Nova Scotians now with their power bills. Nothing to help people who are still being overcharged, nothing to help people who are still receiving random Nova Scotia power bills, and nothing to support folks, all of us likely, who face risk for the rest of our lives because of the credit breach. In housing, there's no guarantee that the money budgeted in this budget for affordable housing isn't going to subsidize private sector developers rather than non-market housing providers. There's no guarantee that these housing investments will go to Nova Scotians. So far, this government's approach has not brought down housing costs or rental costs and has not put more Nova Scotians on a path to home ownership. And we have presented many ideas over the years of where we think the changes are needed. But and those haven't been responded to thoroughly by government. But I mean, I think we can all agree that it's not working. And when something isn't working and you're 5 years in, it's really time to reassess and take a different approach. One of the things that is reduced and on its way to elimination is the secondary suites program. So this was a program that benefited Nova Scotia homeowners. It benefited Nova Scotian renters, and it benefited a lot of small businesses, and it's gone. So again, housing needs to be focused on the folks who are in core housing need, and we're not convinced of what we see in this budget will do that. In health, spending continues, despite some concern about not being able to continue the type of out of control spending that's been happening in healthcare. And yet it's still, the details remain elusive. So I have asked, and we have asked, when will every Nova Scotian have access to primary care? And this budget doesn't answer the question. There's an investment of $84.3 million for health care teams, but in speaking with the department, that's not actually, there's no targets for new appointments, there's no targets for new centers, there's actually no detail around that. And we're not seeing investments in other areas that Nova Scotians need, and what this government promised. In 2022, this government promised a new inpatient wing at the Cobequid Community Health Centre and a 24/7 emergency department. 4 years later, there's still no money in the budget for this. This government has been overseeing the rollout of one patient, one record, and the price tag just continues to increase. In February, the cost of one patient, one record was $365 million. Now there's another $67.7 million in the capital plan. That means this is costing Nova Scotians over $400 million. This spending is all being done behind closed doors, and Nova Scotians have no idea if this government is getting value for money. I would also say it's an example in economic growth of where there was a need, and we should have built an made in Nova Scotia approach so that the money that we have to spend is staying in this province. In economic growth, again, this budget does not present a comprehensive community-based economic growth program. Continues to ignore our traditional industries and our rural areas. There are vast cuts in arts, culture, and tourism, which what we find from tip to tip in Nova Scotia, what makes Nova Scotia special and different and enhances our celebration of our heritage and in small communities. It's what we're known for, and there's extensive cuts. There's extensive cuts to other community-based organizations as well. There's a small investment in fisheries innovation, which is long overdue, and it's not clear how, where the goals will be for that. But agriculture isn't mentioned. There's no further money for season extension, for instance. These are the industries that we have right now in our rural communities. These are the industries that exist from tip to tip in Nova Scotia. And when Nova Scotians want to talk about economic development in their communities, they're often ignored and referred to as special interests. And this is concerning, and also this is expensive. So seeding division and polarization in communities, as opposed to creating social cohesion, that is an expensive way to manage a province. Over the past year, I had the occasion to attend many community meetings on different natural resource issues, and it was frankly inspiring. It was really what this province is good at, right? Is like coming together, sharing information, connecting with people, reaching out, saying, let's get together, let's have a conversation. I didn't see any of the local MLAs in those meetings. I know that they had been approached. So, whether it was the member for Hants West, the member for Pictou Centre, they weren't at these meetings to hear what people were saying in their communities about what they were concerned about, what they wanted, and how maybe they had ideas for getting to similar outcomes. There are extensive program cuts in this budget that we will examine in the coming days. As I said, they're targeted at the communities and experiences that are the foundation of our experiences as Nova Scotians. They're making cuts to our film and TV industry, tourism, arts, cuts to libraries, cuts to municipalities, cuts to the scientific management of our natural resources, troubling cuts for education, and that will make it hard for parents and teachers to support our children. There are deep cuts to the public service. And I think the question really is, what's being cut and why? And how are public service servants and civil service positions cuts being aligned with other program cuts? So, I think we really need to sit with this to understand that public service jobs, which are, good, stable jobs and require a great deal of expertise that people go to school for, people get trained in, and people want to use here in Nova Scotia, that are being cut 30% over the next 4 years. And, those are a lot of jobs in rural areas in Nova Scotia. Those are jobs in every community. And we're already seeing that happen with recent announcements around tourism and that department. And I hear the government say time and time again that these aren't frontline jobs. But when you gut out departments and support functions, that doesn't mean that the person providing those direct services can keep doing the job the way they're doing it. It absolutely has an effect on how frontline service providers can do their work, whether it's in billing and filing and making appointments and doing research. The person sitting there face-to-face with Nova Scotians, often providing really critical services for really vulnerable people, they have people behind them that help. And so if we're gutting this at a rate of 5% a year for a total of 20% in the next 4 years, you're not cutting frontline positions, but you are fundamentally changing the work of frontline positions and how Nova Scotians will receive government services. And at the same time, there's deep cuts in the public services. And again, as everyone knows, we received the budget earlier today and are going through it. But there seem to be significantly expanding budgets in ministerial offices and the office of the deputy minister across many departments. And that's something that we're going to be asking a lot of questions about. And we didn't need to end up here, actually. So, the government tells a story about, the lack of investment for a number of years. Actually, as many of you will remember, when when this government came to power in 2021, when I was first elected, in fact, it was a great amount of unanticipated revenue that was available, and population growth that created that. And instead of thinking, how do we best invest this for the long term, this money was spent. There was reckless spending. And not only that, not only was it not safeguarded and thought of in terms of like when population growth would slow, and thus when federal transfers would slow. This government continued to overspend every year its budget, and for a total, as I said, of $6.7 billion. I think that one of the real challenges with that situation is that then when it comes. Even when it's going to Treasury Board, but certainly when it comes before us in a list at every financial quarter, no one's looking at the whole. So it's like different financial demands are being made, they're being approved, but no one's understanding what the results are, except that we can see that, in fact, we don't have stable housing in this province, that affordability continues to get worse, people are struggling with the cost of living. So, in the early days of this government made mistakes in fiscal planning. They spent unexpected revenue from unprecedented population growth and federal transfers that had no guarantee of being available over the medium or long term. And then ever-fluctuating revenue estimations have been concerning throughout the life of this government, predicting deficits, but ending up with small surpluses. This year, that approach to budgeting caught up with us. It's another dismal financial record set by this government. The largest deficit ever in the province's history, only to be repeated over and over. There is no path to balance. This government has tabled a budget that does not plot a path back to balance where instead expenditures outstrip revenues through to, and it seems past, 2030. Year over year, this government makes a mockery of our democratic system, excluding Nova Scotians from the discussions of what they care about. A major example has been out-of-budget spending. We want the Finance Act to be amended so that in Nova Scotia, we do what every other province does and take a look at the additional out-of-budget spending together on the floor of the House. This would not slow the government's ability to respond to emergencies. It would, however, allow this House, and thus the folks elected by Nova Scotians, as a collective to review spending and signal any questions or concerns. Looking at the budget and out-of-budget spending as a total would allow us to assess if the spending is truly making a difference for Nova Scotians. This government has handed out contracts without competition and money without contracts. They haven't asked for outcomes and they haven't asked for results. And Nova Scotians have no idea if they're getting value for money. Like our home budgets, every dollar spent in one area is a dollar that cannot pay for something else. And when folks spend beyond their budgets, there are consequences. And now we face, for the first time in a generation, a credit rating downgrade. This is, this is a very, we don't even know what to expect, but this basically means, we have net debt that continues to grow at a record high rate and to record high levels. Now an estimated $22 billion for the current fiscal year, and growing to $35 billion by 2029-2030. And what that means is that our borrowing needs, our need to be able to finance how government functions is not going to decrease. With the negative credit rating, what we're going to see is that, in fact, it's going to be more expensive and harder for Nova Scotia to get the money that we need. And that is going to constrain even further the choices about how government supports Nova Scotians. This generational deficit and net debt that this government created will shape our lives for many years in Nova Scotia. And it's been clear that, so the credit rating downgrade that appeared from Standard & Poor actually came out of cycle, because they were basically alarmed by the last fiscal update. And they've been pretty clear about what they see happening in Nova Scotia, and I'll table this after this. The negative outlook reflects our expectation that in the next 2 years, a higher spending base will result in operating deficits and elevated after-capital deficits, persisting beyond our previous expectations. We believe that these deficits could also pressure the province's liquidity position, while the debt burden will increase to more than 150% by fiscal 2028. Will this government commit now to ensure that all spending by government comes to this legislature so that all Nova Scotians know why our debt and deficit keep increasing? We are often asked, okay, well, what would you have spent the money on? What would you have done differently? And I have lots of answers to that, but at a high level, here's a few of them. First of all, we will work with Nova Scotians to make sure that they have a say about what happens in their communities. We would honor the nation-to-nation relationship with the Mi'kmaq based on our treaty obligations. Instead of working together in this budget, there's actually a cut to Elnu Affairs budget that we'll want to hear more about in this legislative session. We wouldn't run after every shiny proposal from the private sector. We want evidence-based decision-making. We want to know how every investment, like they do at the federal level, affects gender equity. We want to know how every investment affects children, and we want to know how every investment affects climate change. We believe in better business management. We would not, the spending that's been being done in alternative procurement has been called out time and time again by the Office of the Auditor General. It's been deemed unnecessary, handed out without contracts, handed out without expected results. And we think we can do better in guarding the public purse. Decisions of government, decisions that spend Nova Scotians' money, need to be based on the best available information. So our message to Nova Scotians is clear. This government has not delivered what they promised, and they have not been accountable for their choices. No government should be making decisions that impact you, your family, your community, and your future without answering for their choices. We knew what was coming. We warned of austerity even while revenues were growing. We knew that you couldn't build spending and make promises for future government money on the basis of insecure fiscal growth. And now we're being asked to trust this government to decide how to manage a difficult short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And forgive us, but we are skeptical. In a moment, as per tradition in this House, I will move to adjourn debate on the estimates. We will continue tomorrow. Tonight we're meeting with Nova Scotians because we want to know what they have to say about the budget. We want to understand from their perspective and their expertise what they're seeing it. We also want to make sure that we're modeling responsiveness for staff and for those who are here with us supporting us. Halifax Regional Police has advised folks to stay off the road and stay home, so we'd like to allow staff to get home. And so with that, I adjourn debate.
The motion is to adjourn debate on the budget address. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary-minded, nay? Nay. The motion has been defeated. The honourable member of Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
What? Yeah.
Never in my life.
That's okay, because I have lots more to say. So.
It's not okay because people need to get home.
And I think also what I want to say, though, is actually it's not okay. There's a lot of folks here working to support us who should be allowed to travel safely to their homes now. And I know that MLAs have been offered hotel rooms no matter where your riding is. But that's not the same, I don't think, for every staff person, every commissioner, every security person.
Order, actually, an email did go out, and staff that are needed in this house are allowed to. Also, your staff that is needed is allowed to as well through your caucus too. So I just want to make sure that that was put out there. An email came out from the Speaker's office to every caucus and independent. So I just want to make sure that that's out there on the plate. I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Across this province, Nova Scotians want to have a say in their community. People are not asking for much. They want to be treated respectfully and to live a decent life. They want to be part of the conversations about their economic futures, the jobs their children will have. But they also know that from tip to tip, Nova Scotia's environment needs to be protected. They want responses from their local MLAs. Again, I've had a really, wonderful experience, an inspiring experience being able to connect with Nova Scotians across the province who are greatly concerned by the lifting of the ban on uranium and fracking, and also changes in terms of how their land can be accessed. And they were constantly surprised, dismayed. These were people who supported their local MLA, who formed government, and yet there they were sitting in community meetings, having invited their local MLA who never showed up. And so people in East Hants, people in River John, people in West Hants were really struck by the fact that they couldn't work with their local representative to talk about what their local communities wanted. So in terms of thinking about affordability, we recently saw some stats come out around child poverty in this province. And I'm actually not going to use the CCPA numbers, but the Nova Scotia Department of Finance also provides these numbers. And in fact, child poverty has doubled in the last 2 years in this province. That's according to the Nova Scotia Department of Finance. We know that the early years are critical for development. We also know a few things about child poverty in this province. A child's experience of poverty is because of context. It's not an individualized experience, and it's not random. We have the data to understand which children, newcomers, racialized and Indigenous children, are most likely to live in poverty. We can track poverty by postal code, and each MLA in this House should understand how many children in their riding are living in poverty. There are deep pockets of poverty and many children, a disproportionate number of children living in poverty in Queens, for instance, in Digby, Annapolis, and in Halifax Atlantic. And these MLAs and all ministers should be fighting for the children in their ridings. So this budget doesn't talk about poverty. It doesn't talk about the realities that Nova Scotians are facing. And the thing is, we actually know a lot about how to address child poverty. It is simply a matter of choice. It is not mysterious about how you decrease child poverty. Income support, employment that pays a living wage, stable housing, and affordable food. Those measures will decrease child poverty. Leaving children in poverty is cruel. It affects their short-term and long-term abilities, and we stand out, unfortunately, amongst Canadian provinces for what we spend on programs that support families and children. So Stats Canada recently revealed that Nova Scotia spends 78% less than the Canadian provincial average on programs that support families and children, like child benefits and affordable child care services. We need a child and youth advocate. We have a commitment for a commissioner. This budget creates an office for children and youth. It's not the same. It's not the same, so we'll be asking questions about that. Another place where this government made big promises and is not delivering. Child care is an economic policy. It's a rural development strategy. Families in Nova Scotia are paying double what parents in other Atlantic provinces are paying. That means they're paying $3,600 more out of pocket per child per year. Again, we know how to address child and family poverty by making it easier for families to work and by making childcare, good quality childcare, available so that every child and every family can have access to it. This government has declared it doesn't intend to lower childcare fees to $10 a day. Meanwhile, 8 provinces and territories, including PEI, Newfoundland, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Quebec, have all managed to reduce child care fees to $10 a day. 1 in 3 families in Nova Scotia do not have access to affordable child care in their communities, and it's 1 in 2 in rural communities. When we look at about power bills and energy poverty, Again, last year, this government cut the funding for the heating assistance rebate program in half in a year when folks were faced with an enormous credit breach, in a year where individuals and households were receiving bills that were wildly out of whack with what they should be paying. At the same time, Nova Scotia Power was seemingly able to pay its small businesses and contractors on time. And we don't see action. We need action now. We do need action. We do need investments for the future. I don't see where we're talking about things like transmission and that in this budget. And instead, we're looking to push again on industries that the private sector has continually actually walked away from in Nova Scotia. So, now we're involving our universities, we're involving Dalhousie in a way to try and make it to attract private sector proponents. It's not about research. Research doesn't happen in a year. But again, despite having RFPs open, for instance, for uranium exploration, there was no response. This government needs to look at the sectors that are before it in terms of agriculture, fisheries, arts, culture, and tourism, and support those sectors for rural economic development. And I just want to take a moment and talk a bit about the spending review that's been underway. So I've actually had the pleasure, I suppose, of being involved in a number of spending reviews in government, federally and provincially. And it's important. Government should be doing results-based management. What does that mean? Making sure we're evaluating, making sure we're accounting, we're getting value for money for Nova Scotians, and we're getting the results. The current process, much like this government's approach to budgeting overall, seems very haphazard. It's not clear how departments are being engaged, how people are talking across departments, how this is being integrated with cuts to the public service. We need to ensure that decisions are data-driven and will have the least negative effect on Nova Scotians. I'd also like to just comment on the capital budget. So again, we did not receive a copy of the capital budget in advance, as per tradition in the House. I was surprised to see, yet again, the largest capital budget ever, because actually in times when we're facing like a negative outlook in our credit ratings, when money is going to be more expensive and harder to get, actually I believe that what is often recommended is slowing down on capital investments. And so I think that this is another example of this government making decisions, thinking somehow that the money is going to come from somewhere, that there's going to be promises made, and that they can keep affording to spend uncontrollably for the years to come. And if they don't stop, in fact, the credit rating agencies and our lenders are going to stop us as well. So as I said, normally on budget day, we would have stopped a few minutes ago, and we would all have a chance to talk to Nova Scotians about this budget. We have a stakeholder roundtable planned this evening online, so we would get people from different sectors to share with us their responses to the budget. We haven't done that, obviously, and very consistent with this government's approach to hiding information and hiding from Nova Scotians and not answering to them. We're here, but I will offer a few comments on other areas of the budget. So when I looked at the budget, I was very concerned by the cuts that I see in CCTH. So communities, culture, tourism, heritage, we all know this department. It's got to be the best department to be minister of until today. It probably was, because this is where communities go for support. This is where communities go to have community gatherings, help community infrastructure, and really grow the type of community bonds and connections that are actually at the base of what it means to be Nova Scotian, and also are an incredibly important piece of building resilience in a community. And perhaps, the arts sector continues to be perceived somehow as something nice to put money into if we can afford, but it's not a luxury. It's a fundamental asset to any city or community. And to amplify the return from the arts, we first need investment. It's been demonstrated time and time again that arts contribute to community well-being, education, tourism, and economic development. Every dollar invested in the arts returns value to this province, supporting jobs, local businesses, and cultural vibrancy, again, from tip to tip in this province. Arts organizations generate more than $23 million collectively in revenue. Again, that's mostly spent here, locally in Nova Scotia. They perform for more than 295,000 people every year of all ages, from all walks of life, and in communities across our province. They employ more than 1,300 full and part-time people, and the arts attract investment, including more than $8.8 million from other levels of government. So we are concerned when we see the cuts in this budget proposed to CCTH. These are the types of cuts that will have very long-term impacts on Nova Scotians and on Nova Scotian communities. We know how much Nova Scotians value building their communities, building their community infrastructure, and without adequate support, they'll lose those opportunities. There's also a few other areas where we would have hoped to have seen more investment, and really where I guess I would say that Nova Scotians would be right to be skeptical about how decisions are being made in this government. And here's but a small example. The government recently released the 2S LGBTQIA+ action plan. And I will talk about that a bit more at a later date. But in it talks about investments for community-based organizations and art spaces and community spaces. However, the action plan doesn't provide any key performance indicators. It doesn't include any financial commitments. It doesn't offer any timelines. And so people are concerned about that, because you can say all the nice things you want to say, that you want to support community-based organizations, but if you don't back that up, it's pretty meaningless. It's actually worse than it's quite a cynical approach to saying one thing and then doing another, or in this case, not doing another. I think there's other areas where, in terms of community and rural economic development, we're missing the mark. So I talked about the agriculture sector, who have been very clear for many years about what is needed. And that includes season extension. We could become much more food secure with better investments in being able to process and store and sell the things that are being grown in this province. This government's approach to mining, the only mining that's actually sort of generating any interest is gold mining, in fact, in this province. And yet our gold mining royalties remain incredibly low. This is a really missed opportunity for this province when we see gold mining expanding, but we're still only taking really peanuts based on the global price of gold. And supporting Main Street. So we're seeing all kinds of small businesses struggling and closing across this province, whether it's local restaurants, local breweries, and again, we've lived in a province where over the last few years, small communities have blossomed with their main streets. But this requires the right support from government in order to continue. As I said, normally we would have had more time to go through the budget line by line, but I think that our concerns with this budget remain clear. This government is not clear with Nova Scotians. It's not getting the results that Nova Scotians need. And, you know, previous budgets were branded as something about faster. So I don't even remember what they were, but that was the tagline. And I guess, you know, I was really curious to see what the budget would be titled, in fact, today. I thought maybe it would say creating generational debt faster, or leaving Nova Scotians behind faster. You know, what I would say is that we will be holding this government to account. Nova Scotians deserve a say in how their communities are developed, have a say and have accountability from this government in how their money is being spent. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honored to... A lot of people are losing their jobs. Nobody should be laughing. Nobody should be laughing in here. Thousands of people are losing their jobs, and people are clapping and laughing. And that's terrible. That's terrible. So I'm honored to rise in my place today to say a few words on the budget. We'll have lots of opportunity to talk about it throughout estimates. There'll be lots of questions that we'll all have. But I do want to, I look at the cover, and I believe this is the first time the Premier's not on it. And there's a picture of a windmill blade, but in the budget there's very little invested in it. So it doesn't make sense to me. But I do, before I get into my notes, which I find amazing that this actually made the budget speech, with the deficit that is projected, with the jobs that are being lost, with no path to fiscal balance, that page 7 of this speech summed it up for me, where the government does not want to take responsibility for the fact that they created this deficit themselves. And I want to read it, just so everybody gets it, people watching, maybe people watching at home, some of this. In the budget speech, a province that cannot manage its finances cannot defend what matters most. Go on, really? We're in a $1.5 billion deficit, and we're about to cut $130 million in programs that Nova Scotians use every day. So I can't, again, this is the budget speech, right? High deficits limit flexibility. Didn't know that either. Here we are. The highest deficit in the history of this province. Of course, it's going to limit flexibility. I don't know who wrote this in this speech, but I can't believe it made it into the speech. Rising debt crowds out future choices. It sure does. And it's going to continue for generation after generation because this government couldn't control its finances. Every dollar spent servicing debt is a dollar we cannot spend responding to new challenges or protecting essential services. This budget, for the first time, to service the debt of this province is going to be over $1 billion. That is absolutely unbelievable in a population the size of this province. In a world volatile with trade relationships, shifting interest rates, and unpredictable global politics, financial stability is not optional. Go ahead.
Order. Somebody has their phone on. Please make sure when you're in here that your phone is, or you're listening to a video, because I can hear music. So just please make sure your phone is turned off, and let's try to respect the people that are talking. I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll get a few more points on this amazing page 7 of the budget. Discipline is about guardrails. The net to GDP is going to go over 40%. We're going past the guardrail. We're going past the guardrail that experts have told us. This is in the speech because the government doesn't want to take responsibility for it. They want to blame everybody else for this massive deficit. And to my colleague's point, they did come in with large revenues, and they did come in with historic population growth, and they came in with historic federal transfers, and here we are 5 years later. 5 years later with $1.5 billion deficit that now families, because the notices aren't out yet, it's quiet right now. The budget is tabled. Now the letters are going to start going to those families. And the letters are going to start going to those organizations. And this place is going to get loud real quick. Real quick. And I can tell you from experience because out of all the 55 people in here, three of us here lived what was the disaster of the NDP government. Had to slash we had to write off bad debt. People were upset. Credit ratings were an issue. Everything was an issue. Only three of us had to deal with it. Myself, the member from Timberley Prospect, and the member from Halifax Atlantic. And here we are again, and this is that on steroids, with $1.5 billion deficit. And I've lived it. I've lived it. I've lived it. I've seen families impacted by it. And as I said, it's quiet right now. It's not going to be quiet at the end of the week. And it's going to be heartbreaking for a lot of people. It's going to be heartbreaking for a lot of people who are going to go home, who've worked extremely hard in this province, and they're going to have to go home and tell their families they lost their job. Not because they didn't do their job, but because for years they dedicated their career and their passion to support Nova Scotians, and this government is going to cut thousands of them. Thousands of them. And then they're going to put stuff like that in the speech and take no responsibility for it at all. It's just unbelievable to me that we're at this point right now, because it never had to happen. It never had to happen. None of it. Strong fiscal management, tendering contracts, proper oversight. You're not in a position where you're sending thousands of people home. But that wasn't the case. Over $1 billion in untendered contracts. Spending money like there was no end. And now we're in a situation where all these families are going to be impacted. Wonderful organizations across this province are going to lose their funding, which in turn will be more layoffs that you won't see in the books of the government. There'll be hundreds of people laid off because all the program funding will be cut, and people are in here clapping for a budget. It's unbelievable. It's unreal. Do you want to give those families a standing ovation for a budget where they're going to lose their job? They're watching. I'd probably say there are probably hundreds of people watching this budget right now. People have been anticipating this for weeks. For weeks. And the lack of responsibility that the government wants to take in this is just unbelievable. And you're seeing it. You're seeing it in some of the most important industries or important aspects that we have in government. We're cutting tourism. Like, we're making cuts in tourism. Like the visitor information centers, you're going to see more cuts coming. There's a list of departments that are going to be impacted by this. And it's one of our most booming industries. Forever. People come from all over the world to come to Nova Scotia. Why would we make cuts there? It just, none of this makes sense to me. Then you're looking at DNR, and you're seeing the oversight that comes with mineral resource development being wiped out. Just wiped out. There's no environmental stewardship. I was the minister of that department. We went after lots of developments contrary to what the government wants to say. I would argue that we put out more bids and more exploration than they did over the 5 years, onshore and offshore wind. Wind West is just a new name. But the point is that we did it with environmental stewardship. We had the experts and the scientists that would work with us because we're politicians making decisions on important aspects of the not only industry, but the impacts on the community, and they're all gone. Just wipe them out. Like, I can't believe where we're at right now. And here we are, we're going to be talking about this all week. And, you know, they're talking about, like, I got a list here, Madam Speaker, and I'm sitting here like, I could go on for hours, which I don't have right now, but we'll have lots of time to ask questions and estimates. But the government needs to come clean on the fact of how they came to this process of eliminating these positions. How did the government come to the process, Madam Speaker, of making these decisions that are going to impact so many people? What? Waiting for a ruling. I'll keep going. Okay, I wasn't sure if waiting for a ruling or not. And, you know,
Order. So, just had a little conversation here. It's the first day. You're getting close to the line with a comment you had made earlier. I asked, and I think if you go back through your mind, you can see which one it was. If not, I can say. Okay, the come clean comment is getting pretty close to the line. We all know we're not allowed to insinuate anything about any of the members here, so I'm just saying, like, let's all stay above the board. All right, I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and appreciate the feedback. And again, we're going to have lots of time to talk about this in the coming weeks. You know, we have our own suggestions around infrastructure that we're not seeing in this budget. It's been something that we've been talking about for over a year. You have maybe a $2 million investment looking at wind projects, but like what we've been arguing is that if you're looking at major infrastructure projects, you need cell, you need port, you need rails, you need roads. Nova Scotia should be the export mecca for anything going to Europe. And we're seeing Ontario negotiating deals with New Brunswick to move product. So this is the stuff we're also going to be asking during the estimates process. But I want to get back to the situation at hand. And the fact of the matter is, I've seen this before. As I've said, Madam Speaker, I lived this. 3 of us did. 3 of us did under that government, and it was brutal. Those years from 2013 to 17 were brutal. We were writing off bad debt. There was mismanagement all over the place when it came to the financial stability of the province over those years, and we had to bring it back. And my colleague was right. When we came back in 2021, we ran 5 consecutive balanced budgets before COVID came, because we saw, and we still invested in infrastructure contrary to the government. They opened one of the homes at Dominion this week, Fairfield Manor. I was there, I remember making that announcement with my friend, right? And in this budget, they talk about the healthcare redevelopment in Cape Breton and Halifax. So these are continuation projects which are necessary for healthcare delivery, and we want to see what's going to happen with it. But the fact of the matter is, we're in a situation as a province right now, and my colleague said it too as well. You saw the downgrade. That's one thing, but when they're projecting multiple years of negative growth and multiple years where the expenses are going to go up even more, there's no path to get out of this. We're not seeing a path to get out of this. And they're banking the future of the province on a wind project that doesn't have a cable to move power, and natural resource projects, which I know, they're probably some of the same projects that we were talking about back then that take years to develop. So I don't see how we can sit here 5 years later after this government and say it's okay to be $1.5 billion in debt or deficit. You're pretty much doubling the debt of this province over the next 3 years. And that's okay. For what? How are you going to deal with it? This government isn't going to be here forever, and then another government's going to have to come in. And I suspect that government's going to have to pick up the pieces, completely pick up the pieces. Like we had to. When we were in government, we had to pick up the pieces. We had to pick them up. So I'm going to stop there for now, because we're going to have a lot of opportunity to have conversation. But I do want to say this, and I want to reiterate it. A lot of families are going to be impacted, and it's heartbreaking. And a lot of families don't have those notices yet, but they're going to get them. And it's going to be tough for them. It's going to be tough for their kids. These are people that dedicated their lives to working for this province. They did nothing wrong except go to work every day. I always say the government used to say they campaigned on a better paycheck guarantee, and the sad reality is there's a no paycheck guarantee coming for thousands of people. And I think the government should be shamed. I think the government, we did not need to be in this position. This did not have to happen. It did not have to happen. And now we're going to see cuts to jobs. We're going to see families impacted severely. We're going to see great organizations severely impacted by the elimination of grants. And we're only scratching the surface. Like, we're going to get into estimates, and we're going to start digging into this, and we're going to learn more. and we're probably going to see more cuts, and we're probably going to see a lot of things that aren't going to be talked about in this chamber, but we'll get it at estimates. But I do want to say to the families that are going to be impacted, we're going to do whatever we can to fight, and we're going to do whatever we can to advocate for you. This is one of the worst budgets in history of this province. Largest deficit in history. That's the largest deficit in history. That's today. That's what happened today. And it didn't need to be that way. It didn't need to be this way. We're going to learn more. And as I said, this place is going to get loud real quick. And it's going to be a real test to the government caucus, because those families are going to start knocking on your door. They're going to start coming to your constituency office. They're going to be looking for support. They're going to be asking the MLAs directly, why I lost my job. Why, Madam Speaker, why did the government cut all these services? Why did the government have to cut my job? And the MLAs are going to have to speak for it. They're going to have to speak for it. As we all do in our offices every day, we're accountable to the people. We're accountable to the people every day. And now the government caucus, for the first time in 5 years, is making decisions, real decisions. And these decisions are a result of their spending patterns. And now these decisions come down to people, real people who are going to be out of work. And those people are going to rally. And they're going to go to the MLA offices. And they're going to ask questions. And the MLAs better be prepared to answer them. Because I'll tell you this, I've seen this before. I'm not saying this as a member of the opposition caucus. When stuff like this happens, it usually signifies the end of a government. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
With the end of responses to the budget and address, the estimates are now referred to Committee of the Whole. We will now start daily routine. The time is 5:25, and we will end in exactly 1 hour, which is 6:25. Presenting and reading petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I solemnly rise to recognize the tragedy that took place in Tumbler Ridge, BC, after the horrific attack at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. I know 2 weeks have passed since the violence occurred, but I feel it's important to speak because, as Nova Scotians know, the work of healing continues long after the cameras and the attention have gone. École Polytech, La Laloche, Dawson College, Mayerthorpe, and Portapic. Just some of the places and communities that have witnessed a lifetime's worth of violence and grief. And now, sadly, we can add Tumbler Ridge to that list. It's a reluctant fellowship that stands ready to comfort new members that they hope will never come. As Premier, it highlights for me the important work of the Mass Casualty Commission and the hills left to climb. As a father, it's unimaginable and well beyond the normal worries that anyone should have shuffling their kids off to school. Many of my colleagues and leaders across this country have spoken profoundly on this topic, and all I can do is echo much of what has already been said. But we applaud the bravery of the staff at the school and the first responders who attended the scene. We thank the healthcare professionals who helped the victims. They all performed professionally, and they will carry that day with them forever. We wish them peace. To the victims, their families and friends, Nova Scotia grieves for you and grieves with you. Your loss is deeper than my words can touch, but know that we hold you in our hearts and will keep you there. Our friends in Tumbler Ridge will need more than thoughts and prayers, but they will need thoughts and prayers as well. Our province stands in solidarity with British Columbia during this difficult time and the road ahead. From our province to yours, all I can say is we've been there, and we know we are so sorry for what happened. On behalf of the province, I offer Nova Scotia's support to the people of Tumbler Ridge. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to mark a tragedy in our country, the school shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. It is every parent's worst nightmare come to pass. A nightmare with shape and form because we have seen it happen before. We have seen the shattered lives, the grieving parents, the advocacy that comes from these devastating events. And here in Nova Scotia, we have seen tragedy up close. I was able to offer my condolences to Premier Eby following this senseless tragedy, and his reply was 2 words: so awful. While we have all exhausted the words we have to condemn this horrific act, we remain comforted by the important symbols that we have seen. Our political leaders together mourning, a country wrapping its collective arms around a small mountain town. A federal government willing to pause and to hold the families of the community of Tumbler Ridge in their grief. We are no strangers to that grief. We have learned something about how a moment of tragedy, as it turns lives inside out, can also bring people together, can encourage communities to care for each other, can remind us to know and care for our neighbors. Still, that will not make the healing go faster and will not bring back the lives stolen. We join the country in grieving for the lives lost, in expressing gratitude to the teachers and first responders, in the simple acts of hugging our children, thanking our teachers, caring for our communities. We honor the memories of those lost. We work towards a future where all children are safe and cared for, and we express our solidarity for the community of Tumbler Ridge. We stand with you, we love you, we mourn for your loss as if they are our own. May their memories be a blessing.
I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this month, the small community of Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia was shaken by a tragedy no family should ever have to endure. And every parent should be able to send their child to school expecting an ordinary day with trust that they'll be safe, that they'll be able to learn and come home. When that sense of security is shattered, the impact is immediate and lasting. And there are no words that can make sense of that kind of loss. It is something families carry with them for the rest of their lives. It is something classmates, teachers, and neighbors will never forget, a day that becomes part of a community's story forever. And here in Nova Scotia, we understand how deeply a community can be shaken by sudden tragedy. The Premier mentioned those communities. We know that grief reaches far beyond one household. It is felt in the classrooms, in the rinks, in stores, and around kitchen tables. In moments like this, it matters that people know they're not alone. Today, we want the people of Tumbler Ridge to know that we share in your sorrow and that we're thinking of you. We also recognize the courage and bravery of the school staff who acted quickly to protect their students, and the first responders and healthcare professionals who stepped forward in an incredibly difficult moment to provide care and comfort. To the families and to the entire community, Nova Scotia stands with you, and we will continue to keep you in our thoughts as you continue down the journey of healing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Government notice of motions. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Community Culture, Tourism and Heritage.
I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Team Canada competed at the 2026 Olympic Winter Games with determination, skill, and pride, representing Nova Scotia with distinction on the international stage. And whereas 5 Olympians from Nova Scotia, snowboarder Liam Moffat, hockey players Blair Turnbull, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and Brad Marchand, along with women's hockey coaches Troy Ryan and Corey Chevrier, hockey referees Gord Dwyer, Matt McPherson, Sean Aneri, and support staff Daniel McNally and Dylan Daphne, all represented Canada in Italy. They demonstrated remarkable dedication, teamwork, and perseverance throughout the competition. And whereas Team Canada earned 21 medals at the Games, including silver medals in the men's and women's hockey, with Nova Scotians playing a role in those achievements. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House join me in congratulating these athletes, coaches, officials, and staff on their outstanding achievements and recognize the pride and inspiration they bring to Nova Scotians across the province. Madam Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Before we move on, there has been a request for a moment of silence for the Tumbler Ridge, and I feel that that's only too appropriate, so I ask everyone stand. You may be seated. Government notice motion. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care. I recognize the Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Be it resolved that in addition to the Honourable Member for Colchester North and the Honourable Member for Pictou West, the Honourable Member for King South be a chair of committees and Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, and B, that the member for Pictou West be the Deputy Speaker within the meaning of subsection 14(3) of the House of Assembly Act and within the meaning of the House of Assembly Management Commission Act. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. Okay. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Advanced Education.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Be resolved that Rule 69 of the Rules and Forms of Procedure of the House of Assembly is amended by adding 1 immediately after the rule number and adding the following paragraph. 2, at the request of the promoter of a private or local bill, the Private and Local Bills Committee may alter or waive the requirements of paragraph 1, respecting the publication of a notice respecting the bill, subject to any conditions the committee may prescribe. Speaker, I request waiver, notice, and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. There are several nays. The notice of motion is tabled. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Be it resolved that the rules and forms of procedure of the House of Assembly are amended as follows. 1, paragraph 31(1)(a) of the rules is amended by adding or at the request of a minister immediately after ministers. 2, Rule 62FB is amended by adding or at the request of the minister, the minister's ministerial assistant, immediately after minister, the last time it appears. 3, the rules are further amended by adding immediately after Rule 62FB the following rule. 62FBA, at the request of a minister, the ministerial minister assistant may appear before the committee of the whole on supply or the subcommittee on supply during the considerations by the committee or subcommittee, as the case may be, of the minister's estimates, and Rule 62FB respecting support staff applies to the ministerial assistants. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. There are several nays. The notice of motion is tabled. Any more government motions? Introduction of bills. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to make an introduction before I table my bill.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've spent the last several weeks touring the province talking to members of our fire service, fire chiefs, deputy chiefs, fire service coordinators, and municipal leaders to hear their thoughts on how we move forward with strengthening fire services in Nova Scotia. By my side for those sessions were very important members of our fire services, and two of them have weathered the storm to be here with us this evening in the West Gallery. We have Chief Greg Jones, President of the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia, and Mark Bettens, Chief Director of the Cape Breton Regional Fire Service. Madam Speaker, like all firefighters, these two gentlemen have responded to a calling that puts their safety aside to ensure it for others. I want to take an opportunity to thank them for their service, their dedication, and their work to help strengthen fire services in the province, and I ask Greg and Mark to please rise to receive the warm welcome of the House.
Welcome, welcome to the House of the People, and we hope you enjoy yourselves, and thank you for everything that you do, and drive safe when you leave here tonight. Yeah. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Provide Support for Fire Protection Services.
Sorry, first day. Oh. The Honourable Minister of Emergency Management begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Provide Support for Fire Protection Services.
Bill 186, an act to provide support for fire protection services.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the Honourable Member for Hants West.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Declare Windsor, Nova Scotia to be the birthplace of ice hockey.
The Honourable Member for Hants West begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Declare Windsor, Nova Scotia to be the birthplace of ice hockey.
Bill 187, an act to declare Windsor, Nova Scotia to be the birthplace of ice hockey.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Initiate a Regulatory and Ownership Review of Nova Scotia Power Incorporated.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Initiate a Regulatory and Ownership Review of Nova Scotia Power Incorporated.
Bill 188, an act to initiate a regulatory and ownership review of Nova Scotia Power Incorporated.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future date. I recognize the Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Clean Energy Transition and Electricity Affordability.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Clean Energy Transition and Electricity Affordability.
Bill 189, an act respecting the clean energy transition and electricity affordability.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to table a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 158 of the Acts of 1919, an act to incorporate the trustees of St. Matthew's Church in Halifax and to consolidate the trustees of Fort Massey United Church, St. Andrews United Church, and St. Matthew's United Church.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 158 of the Acts of 1919, an act to incorporate the trustees of St. Matthew's Church in Halifax and to consolidate the trustees of Fort Massey United Church, St. Andrews United Church, and St. Matthew's United Church.
Bill 190, an act to amend Chapter 158 of the Acts of 1919, an act to incorporate the trustees of St. Matthew's Church in Halifax, and to consolidate the trustees of Fort Massey United Church, St. Andrews United Church, and St. Matthew's United Church.
Order that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to table a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Office of the Legislative Budget Officer.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Office of the Legislative Budget Officer.
Bill 191, an act respecting the office of the Legislative Budget Officer.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Speaker. I beg leave to table a bill, introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 34 of the Acts of 2001, the Lobbyist Registration Act.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 34 of the Acts of 2001, the Lobbyist Registration Act.
Bill 192, an act to amend Chapter 34 of the Acts of 2001, the Lobbyists Registration Act.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. Do we have any more bills? Seeing no more bills, we'll move to notice of motions. I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Madam Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this government kicked 46,000 Nova Scotians off the heating assistance rebate program just months before temperatures started to drop and power bills started to go up. And whereas almost half of Nova Scotian households are forced to make tough choices about whether to turn their heat down or spend a little less at the grocery store because their wages simply aren't keeping up with the costs, and whereas the Premier, recognizing that the cost of power bills is a top concern for Nova Scotians, has made himself the Minister of Energy, therefore be it resolved that on a future date the House shall debate the need for the Premier to immediately do the right thing and restore the heating assistance rebate program to help Nova Scotians pay their power bills. Madam Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? No. There are several nays. The notice of motion is tabled. I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Nova Scotians are spending $400 more on their power bills today than they were when this government got elected 5 years ago. That's 30% more for power than Canadians living in other provinces. And Nova Scotia Power has applied to increase power bills by another 8%. And whereas, in addition to the rate increase, Nova Scotia Power had a massive data breach last year that led to the overbilling of households across the province. And whereas the Premier, as this province's energy minister, spent just 30 days in the legislature last year and failed to put solutions in place to address the frustration Nova Scotians have about their increasing power bills, therefore, Be it resolved that on a future date, the House shall debate the need for this government to remain in the legislature until the minister has taken concrete action to address Nova Scotians' skyrocketing energy costs and unaffordable power bills. Madam Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? No. There are several nays. The notice of motion is tabled. Seeing no more, I move on to statements by members. I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland South.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Honourable Ernie Fage, who passed away in January. Ernie, a longtime Nova Scotia MLA for Cumberland North, was first elected in 1997 and served as Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Economic Development, Human Resources, the Public Service Commission, Emergency Management, Natural Resources, and Energy. Ernie, along with his brother, also owned Fage Farms, a farming operation in Napan. Ernie was appreciated in all aspects of his life with resilience, tenacity, can't even speak today, and a can-do attitude. Over the years, Ernie became a close, personable friend. After the boundaries had changed, Madam Speaker, a few years back, Ernie became one of my constituents, and I always look forward to our conversations and his guidance over the last couple of years. Madam Speaker, I ask that this legislature join me in honouring the memory of Ernie Fage and show our support to his wife Elaine and his family. Elaine and Ernie, or Ernest as Elaine would call him, were certainly a true team. Madam Speaker, I would ask for a moment of silence in memory of Honourable Ernie Fage.
Please rise. You may be seated. I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Rachel Reed, the Nova Scotian author who brought us the Culture-Shifting Game Changers series. Her work has topped both the New York Times and Globe and Mail's bestsellers list and has led to the limited series TV sensation Heated Rivalry. Rachel's work has brought joy and inspiration to millions across the globe. At a time when hope can feel scarce and even hockey can make us sad, her stories remind us of the power of love, vulnerability, and belonging. But her impact goes much further. Her work is reshaping the cultural imagination around professional sports. It has sparked meaningful conversations about long-standing homophobia, especially in one of our most beloved sports, hockey. Rachel has proven once again why art matters, but especially why Nova Scotian and Canadian art matters. Thank you, Rachel, for your extraordinary work, and congratulations on your remarkable success.
I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to rise in this House today to recognize the passing of our former Chief Clerk, Neil Ferguson. As the Chief Clerk of the Nova Scotia Legislature for nearly a decade, Neil earned the respect of us legislators, but also fellow clerks across the country. Through his unwavering dedication, he demonstrated the profound value and enduring importance of our democratic institutions. Neil was a kind soul, always willing to share his extensive wisdom on the rules and procedures of the House, and his guidance was sought by many, and his generosity in sharing his knowledge enriched all who had the privilege of working alongside him. He was there at my first swearing-in ceremony in 2013, and I remember distinctly meeting Neil when he was handing out the MLA pins that members would know, because he said just how many pins there were out there, I think, trying to convey the importance of what the privileges we have of sitting in the House, since so few get to do that. It was clear to me how seriously Neil viewed the role of the public service, but also the independence of the legislature. And I want to say that his professionalism and integrity set a standard for all who followed. We are truly fortunate to know Neil Ferguson. His presence in the legislature was a reminder of the dignity and responsibility that comes with serving the people of Nova Scotia. He will be dearly missed, and I appreciate, Madam Speaker, you hosted the flag ceremony at half-mast. But I do want to ask for a moment of silence to honor the legacy of Neil while we're sitting in the House. Thank you.
Absolutely. Please rise, everyone. You may be seated. I recognize the honourable member for Clayton Park West.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to celebrate African Heritage Month. This is a time to recognize the strength, the resilience, and the countless contribution of African Nova Scotians who have shaped this province for more than 400 years. This year's theme, Strength in Unity, Moving Forward with Purpose, Prosperity, Power, and Progress, reminds us that when we come together with shared purpose, we can create change for the betterment of our communities. This month, we honor our elders and the wisdom they carry, while engaging our youth will bring fresh energy and vision to drive the legacy into the future. As we celebrate, it's important we recognize those who came before us, the individuals who broke barriers, built thriving communities, and created pathways for future generations. Their legacy is one of innovation, strength, and boundless hope. I hope many residents were able to attend the cultural performances and events taking place across Nova Scotia. I hope they had the opportunity to listen to the voices of African Nova Scotians and to share in their stories. I hope they were able to understand the work being done to better our province, because progress occurs when we learn from the past and we allow those lessons to guide the future we build together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax City Sable Island.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge Daniel McKay and his lifelong commitment to connecting community through action and access to information. Daniel was born in the early 1960s at the very southernmost tip of Nova Scotia and grew up in Bridgewater. In 1981, he moved to Halifax, and after graduating from King's College, he became involved in the city's gay culture, including helping to build the interior of Rumors on Granville Street in 1983. And in the late 1980s, he would take over publishing for the Gazette, the publication for the Gay Alliance for Equality, which would be renamed Waves Magazine. Combined, the papers have had a 25-year run as a printed magazine and have been rebooted as a virtual magazine by Daniel in 2023. He's been at the heart of many 2S LGBTQIA+ advocacy organizations such as Halifax Pride, and he's an active member of the Elderberries since its inception in 2012. He created the Halifax Rainbow Encyclopedia as well. I ask all members to join me in recognizing Daniel McKay as an outstanding community volunteer and leader.
I recognize the honourable member for Sydney Member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to my place to recognize a Sydney resident who passed in September, and his name is Michael Bonaparte. Michael Bonaparte lived a wonderful life with his wife Yvonne and their children, both grown, that are living in different parts of Nova Scotia. And I rise to my place because Mike was a big supporter of me since I was a kid. And he was involved with a lot of my campaigns over the years. He was always there to help wherever he could. And, you know, we're all very blessed to have people who help us on this political journey. Mike was one of those for me. And everybody loved him. He was the life of the party. He loved Celtic music. He loved spending as much time as he could with Yvonne and his family. So I rise to my place to recognize my friend who we lost in September, Michael Bonaparte.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford Basin.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the Muslim holy celebration of Ramadan, currently underway across the world. One of the 5 pillars of Islam, Ramadan is observed by Muslims across the world to commemorate the month in which Holy Scripture, including the Quran, was revealed to prophets over the centuries. Ramadan is of major significance to followers of Islam. Over the period of Ramadan, many Muslims will pray, fast, reflect, give charity, and come together for various rituals as a community. Speaker, I ask that all members of Nova Scotia's legislature join me in wishing a peaceful and reflective Ramadan to Nova Scotia's Muslim community. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay my respects to a beloved member of the Dartmouth North community, Angus Duncan, who died suddenly on September 24th, 2025. Angus was a pillar of the community and brought his unique sense of joy and light to every room he was in. He was a longtime member of the Dartmouth Players and performed many roles both on and off the stage throughout the years. I got to know him as a stalwart volunteer of the community when I helped produce the Dartmouth North Stone Soup production, not related to Dartmouth Players, in 2019. Angus was a part of the project from the beginning and starred as one of the 3 strangers that come to town looking for food, and it was a delight to work with him. He was also a dedicated member of the North Grove community. On the day he died, he had spent the morning working in the community garden at the North Grove, a testament to his caring and love for his community. Angus leaves a lasting impact on all those he met, and he will be missed by so many. I ask the whole House to join me in sending condolences and love to Angus's family and to the many people who were lucky to call him a friend.
I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to recognize the recent passing of Jane O'Neill. Jane was an exceptional lawyer whose career reflected both brilliance and integrity. Her career spanned clerking at the Supreme Court of Canada to becoming a respected partner at McGuinness Cooper, known for her intellect and strong advocacy. But beyond her remarkable professional accomplishments, Jane was a trusted advisor and a dear friend to many. As counsel to the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, she always provided steady and grounded advice.
I'm sorry, member, and I'll keep track of the clock. Please, whoever has your phone off, although the 1916 music is lovely, we should not be hearing it right now. Please turn your phones off. Yeah, I'm going to recognize the honourable member, and I apologize, but it's still going. We figured it out. We're going to start over. I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to recognize the passing of Jane O'Neill. Jane was an exceptional lawyer whose career reflected both brilliance and integrity. Her career spanned clerking at the Supreme Court of Canada to becoming a respected partner at McGuinness Cooper, known for her intellect and strong advocacy. But beyond her remarkable professional accomplishments, Jane was a trusted advisor and a dear friend to many. As counsel to the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, she always provided steady and grounded advice. She generously gave her time and her talent to our party, and we are better because of her contributions. On behalf of our entire party and to me personally, I extend our heartfelt condolences to her family, especially her children, Sam, Audrey, and Bridget. We hope you take comfort in knowing how respected and admired your mother was. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member, and again, my apologies for interrupting during your statement. I recognize the honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise today to recognize Team Canada's men's hockey team and congratulate them on their silver medal performance at the 2026 Winter Olympics, and in particular to celebrate Nova Scotians who wore the maple leaf with extraordinary pride. We all shared in the heartbreak of a 2-1 overtime loss to the U.S., but the journey to that final was nothing short of remarkable, and at the heart of it were our Nova Scotians. Sidney Crosby led and inspired with distinction, something he has done his entire career. Nathan McKinnon delivered one of the tournament's most memorable moments, scoring the game-winning goal in the dying seconds of the semi-final to send Canada to the gold medal game. And Brad Marchand was at his best when it mattered most, battling, competing, and being that person you want on your team. Nova Scotia should be enormously proud. Silver is not the color they wanted, but the pride Nova Scotia feels today is golden. Please join me, Madam Speaker, in thanking Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, and all of Team Canada for their dedication, their resilience, and the silver they brought home to this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to make an introduction.
Please do.
Speaker, in the gallery today, we have the Vice President of Nova Scotia NSGEU, Hugh Gillis, is with us. We also have in the gallery from CUPE, Director Tracy Pinder, Taylor Johnson, Tammy Martin, Nelson Scott, and plus several other long-term care workers, Madam Speaker. I rise to welcome the members from CUPE, Nova Scotia, who have come to the legislature to bring attention to the problems in long-term care. They are asking this Conservative government to stop ignoring the hard-working long-term care workers of this province and offer them a fair deal instead of lining the pockets. Workers in long-term care provide care to one of the most vulnerable populations, our seniors. CUPE represented long-term care workers who have been working without a contract since 2023, Madam Speaker, despite repeated attempts to the bargain deal has failed. Madam Speaker, my solidarity with CUPE Nova Scotia. Thank you.
Welcome to the House. Sorry if I scared you. I wasn't too sure if that was your introduction or your member statement, but I see you combined both. Welcome. We hope you enjoy your time here. Thank you for making it out in such terrible weather. Appreciate you. Appreciate the work you do. I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the hockey theme, I rise in my place to recognize a wonderful tournament that took place, hosted by member 2 and Senator 200. It was the World Women's Under-18 Hockey Championships, which saw elite players come from all over the world into our community. Over and over again, whenever there's an event in Sydney or the greater area, everybody steps up. We had hundreds of volunteers, we had great sponsors, and we had people packing the rinks for the game. So I rise in my place to recognize everyone in member 2, everyone with the city, with the CBRM, and Senator 200, and all the volunteers that, whether it was the World Women's Curling Championship, whether it was this event, every event is top notch, and it's because of the people that we have on the ground that dedicate not only putting on a great event for our community, but welcoming the world. So congratulations to everyone on a great World Women's Under-18 Championship, and we all thank you very much.
I recognize the honourable member for Hants West.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Team Canada's women's hockey team on their outstanding silver medal performance at the 2026 Winter Olympics. Over the entire Olympics, the team played against the best of the best, and their determination and skill made Canadians proud. As Nova Scotians, we have particular reason to celebrate. Forward Blair Turnbull, assistant coach Corey Cheverie, athletic therapist Danielle McNally, and head coach Troy Ryan are all proud Nova Scotians who represented this province on the world's biggest stage. Their journey represents the years of dedication, sacrifice, and a love of the game that began right here at home. They are an inspiration to young athletes across the province and remind us what sport is truly about. Bringing communities together, celebrating excellence, and showing the world what we are capable of achieving. Madam Speaker, please join me in congratulating Team Canada's women's hockey team on a remarkable Olympic Games performance. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Lunenburg West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize the LaHave Islands Marine Museum on Bell Island, a local institution that plays an important role in preserving the inshore fishing traditions and community history of the LaHave Islands. Each August, the museum hosts its Fisherman's Memorial Service, a meaningful occasion that reflects the deep connection between these islands and the sea. This past summer, the service was followed by a dedication of a new memorial monument created by Ivan Higgins and commissioned through Cosby's Garden Centre to honor those who were lost at sea. The monument stands as a thoughtful and lasting tribute to the risks faced by fishing communities and the strength of coastal communities. I would also like to recognize Doug Berrigan, who has served as president of the Museum Society for 26 years and was recently named the 2024 Canadian Museum Volunteer of the Year. His long-standing leadership alongside the work of dedicated volunteers such as curator Kathy Sullivan and Lise Bell, who led the memorial project, has helped ensure that local history is preserved and shared. Madam Speaker, I invite Nova Scotians to visit the museum during its seasonal opening and immerse themselves in the stories and spirit of the Lehave Island's coastal heritage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham. I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham. The mic's not coming on.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize February as African Heritage Month. Black history in Nova Scotia is very distinct, as Nova Scotia is the birthplace of Black history in Canada. African Heritage Month is a time to celebrate the history, culture, and leadership of African Nova Scotians and the 52 African Nova Scotian communities who continue to show the power of community and standing together. At a time when the world feels more divided than ever, this year's theme, Strength and Unity, moving forward with purpose, prosperity, power, and progress, has never been more important. Moving forward with purpose also means following through and taking action, breaking down the barriers and righting the wrongs. African Heritage Month is not just about honoring the past. It's about committing to a better and brighter future, not just for this month, but for 365 days of the year. So let us celebrate our achievements, our accomplishments, and our impacts that we as African Nova Scotians have made in contributing to Nova Scotia and Canada. Let us honor the past and shape the future.
I recognize the honourable member for Cole Harbour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I rise to celebrate two of the Cole Harbour kids who wore the maple leaf at the Milano Cortina Olympic Winter Games and showed once again that Canada men's hockey team has deep roots in our province. Sidney Crosby has carried the hopes of a nation on his shoulders for 2 decades. His leadership on and off the ice inspired a team through the grueling journey to the gold medal game, even after an injury forced him to watch the final from the bench. And Nathan McKinnon rose to the moment when it was mattered most. His game-winning goal against Finland with 35 seconds left to play sent Canada to the final and will not soon be forgotten. Cole Harbour is a small place with a long memory, and we are honored that our community is home to these two amazing players, and we are so deeply proud of them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel, Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Eating Disorders Nova Scotia, an organization working to support those with eating disorders in Halifax and across the province. EDNS offers support groups, education, peer support, and programming for those living with eating disorders, so that Nova Scotians have the support they need for eating disorder recovery. Each year, thousands of Nova Scotians seek support through EDNS. They recently opened their first physical space located at 2711 Agricola Street. The team is now able to provide many in-person wellness programs to members of our community. In one recent week, this included dog therapy, supper club, restorative yoga, and creative expressions. And of course, their critical programming continues online with Body Peace Canada peer support programs for all ages and all genders, and with specific community-focused programs, such as Coloring the Conversation for BIPOC folks. I'm happy to congratulate them on their new home and pleased to stand in appreciation of the important work being done by Eating Disorders Nova Scotia.
I recognize the honourable member for Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Brad Marchand of Hammonds Plains, who has brought the same relentless, impossible-to-ignore energy to the 2026 Olympic Winter Games in Milan that could have defined his entire career. Brad has arrived in Italy managing an injury, expecting to play a supporting role, his words, not mine. Instead, he became one of the sparks that kept Canada's gold medal hopes alive. In the semifinals against Finland, with Canada trailing and the tournament on the line, it was Brad's line that changed the team's momentum and helped send the team to the final. That is who he is, a Nova Scotian who rises to the occasion. A silver medal in Milan is a remarkable achievement, and Brad Marchand, who made the Olympic debut at 37 years of age, is a chapter worthy of a career he has built. Hammonds Plains could not be prouder of you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North. Okay.
Madam Speaker, November 29th, 2025 saw the return of a particularly sweet Dartmouth tradition, the second annual cake run. Starting on Louise Court in Creighton Park, participants were invited to run as many loops of Lake Banook and Sullivan's Pond as they could within 8 hours. The winners, that is, those who did the most laps, would each take home a beautiful cake, and each runner was treated to an unlimited amount of cupcakes between laps. That's the kind of marathon I can really get behind. The cake run, organized by ultra-marathon enthusiasts Laura Slomway and Ian McGuinness and their dog Arthur, saw 54 people and 14 dogs participate, running more than 1,150 kilometers total. Laura and Ian and their cake-loving friends raised $1,800 for the SPCA in memory of their dog, Sweet Danny Boy. I asked the House to join me in congratulating Laura, Ian, and all those who participated in their successful cake run, and asked them to please make sure it comes back next year.
I recognize the honourable member for Gosborough-Tracadie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize African Heritage Month and to honour the rich history and lasting contributions of African Nova Scotians, particularly in communities of Sunnyvale, Lincolnville, and Upper Big Tracadie. This year's theme, Strength and Unity, Moving Forward with Purpose, Prosperity, Power, and Progress, reminds us that true progress happens when we work together with shared purpose and respect. Earlier this month, I had the honour of speaking at the flag raising and proclamation led by Elder and Municipal Councillor Mary Desmond. It was a meaningful celebration of culture and community. Highlights included Nathan Clyke on African drums, Nathan Sparks leading the libation, and Ainley and Langston Dorrington sharing the touching story they wrote about their grandfather growing up in Sunnyvale. Madam Speaker, it is especially encouraging to see so many young people in these communities emerging as leaders and role models. Their pride in their heritage ensures that traditions remain strong for generations to come. Madam Speaker, during African Heritage Month, we honour our elders, celebrate our youth, and recognize the living history and ongoing contributions of African Nova Scotians across this province. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to make another introduction.
Please do.
Madam Speaker, in the gallery opposite of me is Melissa Ellsworth, who has been fighting for WCB for many years and has been slowly losing her life due to inadequate help. I ask everyone to welcome Melissa to the House.
Welcome to the host of the people. Glad you're here. Please be careful when you leave tonight, as the roads might be a little hazardous. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On a happier note, I rise today to make a very important announcement. On January 20th, 2026, my niece Lennon became a big sister when Aubrey James Allison came into the world. A huge congratulations to my sister-in-law Bria, my brother-in-law Corey, and to my niece Lennon for welcoming their quartet to this family. We are excited to have another brown cousin as part of our girl crew, and I look forward to many years of watching that little girl grow and watching Lennon become the best big sister. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we commemorate African Heritage Month, I want to make special mention of Henderson Paris. After his son experienced a racial incident at the Pictou camps of the NSCC, Henderson decided to do something positive, driven by love for community. It was to be the start of something bigger, something special, and something noble. In 1990, Henderson founded the Run Against Racism, and in the process became the symbol for the fight against racial discrimination in northeastern Nova Scotia. The run started with 4 runners, including Henderson, and grew to become a community event with several hundred runners each year, including students from all the local schools. More than 35 years ago, Henderson started a movement. Henderson also worked to ensure Viola Desmond was recognized and honored for being featured on our $10 bill. Her stand against racial injustice inspired a nation to do better. The Viola Desmond Wall on the historic Roseland Theatre was an important tribute, but a sensitive process. Henderson chaired the committee, making sure the significant project was brought to fruition. Henderson is known as the face that represents racial equality for all in Pictou County and northeastern Nova Scotia. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the members of the legislature, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Henderson and let him know that we all appreciate his hard work and dedication to this important issue. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to warmly welcome Encore Thrift Store to the neighborhood of Halifax Needham. Encore is a unique, new-to-you boutique thrift store in Halifax that gives you the feeling of a retail clothing store with the prices of a secondhand store. And all of their revenue supports Hospice Halifax, so you can purchase with a purpose. Hospice Halifax is a compassionate and supportive community of staff members, volunteers, and donors dedicated to making dying and living as comfortable and as meaningful as possible at the end of life. The store is located at 2748 King Street in Richmond Yards, a few steps away from my office. Such a treat. And I'd like all members to join me in welcoming Encore Thrift Store to the community. And if you're looking for some really nice wares that will be in the place, trust me, you will leave with something for an amazing price. So all while supporting people in your community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize my right hand and my left hand, my amazing constituency coordinator, Lisa Rochon. I remember the day that Lisa came in for her initial interview for the position of constituency assistant right after my election in 2017. She brought with her delicious donuts. Madam Speaker, she has been looking after me ever since, and the residents of Eastern Passage have benefited. Not only is Lisa exceptional at her work she does for our community, she coordinates and helps me on numerous events throughout the year, including our multicultural potluck dinner coming up this Friday night. Madam Speaker, she is dedicated and goes above and beyond every time to make sure that anyone who calls our office visits or gets the support that they need. And the bit of the joke, Madam Speaker, is that oftentimes when people call my office and I answer the phone, they're like, oh, I wanted to talk to Lisa. So I know how important she is to our community. Madam Speaker, I ask all members of the legislature to join me in celebrating my wonderful constituency coordinator and dear friend, Lisa Rochon, and to say a very happy birthday to you, Lisa.
I recognize the honourable member for Fairview Clayton Park.
Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Charles Charlie Robert Turner, a titan of the Fairview community who passed away on December 28, 2025, at the age of 90. As a dedicated educator, his professional impact was profound, serving as the principal of Fairview Elementary for 31 years, where he shaped the lives of generations of local students. Beyond the classroom, Charlie's faith and passion for service led him to various leadership roles at the Fairview United Church. His most enduring community legacy, however, was his collaboration with local churches to establish the Halifax West Ecumenical Food Bank. He was recognized as a community hero by Register's Digest and named an HRM Outstanding Volunteer in 2014. I ask all members to join me in recognizing Charlie's lifelong devotion to Fairview and in extending our deepest condolences to his family, friends, and the many former students who remember him so fondly. Thank you, Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Colchester Musquodoboit Valley.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and welcome back. I rise today to celebrate the volunteers of the Middle Stewiacke Recreation Center. Now, the Middle Stewiacke Recreation Center used to be an elementary school, and when the elementary school closed due to suffering enrollment, a group of community volunteers dedicatedly got together and started the Middle Stewiacke Recreation Center. It's a place where the community gathers. It's a real home for the community, whether it be a birthday party, pickleball, craft shows, and sometimes even celebrations of life. This provides a needed community center for the people of Middle Stewiacke. So to the staff and volunteers of the Middle Stewiacke Recreation Center, thank you for the time and effort you put in. This is a great, great facility for that community. And stay tuned, cell service is coming this summer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Armdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize a constituent of mine, Melva McEachran, who, as we speak, is waiting to celebrate her 101 birthday. I met her last year when I was canvassing, and she asked me, what are you doing about collaborative health care centers, and why aren't we doing more? Melba recently had a setback in her health, but one of the greatest stories she told me is that her first time she voted was in 1943, because women were not allowed to vote until 1929. So the first time she voted was in 1943, and at that time she voted for a member of the NDP, no surprise in Ontario, because as a teacher she saw many children in rural areas, Western Ontario, living with rickets and poverty, and the NDP candidate at the time was offering free milk and meals in schools at the time. So Melba, I hope you're listening, and I hope you get well, and I'll see you at your next birthday.
I recognize the honourable member for Digby-Annapolis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is with deep sadness I rise today to recognize Harold Joseph Alexander, who passed unexpectedly on September 20th at the age of 70. Harold was a beloved husband, father, and community leader who dedicated his life to his family, his work, and to the service of others. Harold's career brought him from Newfoundland to Digby, where he met the love of his life, Meredith. Together, they built a life rooted in kindness, hard work, and family, raising their 3 children, Megan, Liam, and Rebecca. Harold was admired across the forestry sector for his leadership and vision. He ran a sawmill and managed woodlots in the Digby area with his business partner, Brian Thomas. Harold gave deeply of himself, was a dedicated volunteer, a lifelong coach to youth sports, and a man of faith as an active member in his church. Madam Speaker, Harold and I shared many chats, phone calls, and outings where Harold would speak of the many opportunities for our province in our use of biomass. Madam Speaker, I ask that all members of the House join me in offering our heartfelt condolences to Harold's family. Harold leaves behind a legacy of love, service, and community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Fairview Clayton Park.
Speaker, I rise today to recognize a remarkable Black entrepreneur, Appy, the owner of Fairview Clayton Park's own Halifax Braids. Appy has been empowering the Black community in Nova Scotia to continue their natural hair journey. Appy's own experience began with postpartum alopecia and difficulties finding extensions for herself that matched the right texture and style. Faced with a lack of options, Appy was motivated to become a certified hairstylist through the Cosmetology Association of Nova Scotia. Using her skills, Appy launched Appy the Wigologist and later founded Halifax Braids, a one-stop salon dedicated to providing premium wigs, textured extensions, and protective styles that serve the Black community and anyone seeking to care for their natural hair. Her work is not only about beauty, but about empowerment. Her work helps people facing hair loss or those simply wishing to feel confident, proud, and to celebrate their natural selves. Thank you, Speaker.
Order. Order, please. The time allotted has elapsed. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That concludes the government business for today. I move the House that now do rise and meet February 24th between the hours of 1 and 11:59. Following the daily routine and question period, government business will include second reading of Bill 186 and private and local members' bills.
The motion is that the House rise to meet again on Tuesday, February 24th between the hours of 1 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned until Tuesday, February 24th at 1 p.m.